Before we begin, a quick note. In this episode, I'm going to present the written account of Kadesh as Ramesses told it, with a bit of commentary and some music. But that is only half of the story. If you're interested in the visual side of things, I will be doing a live stream about the art of Kadesh on Sunday the 14th of September, UK time. There are details in the episode description, including a link to my YouTube channel where we'll do the stream. If you're listening in the future, the recording will be available on Patreon for a couple of months, and then it'll go out to the public. So once again, live stream about the art of Kadesh on Sunday the 14th of September. Hope to see you there. In 1287 BCE, Ramesses returned from his Kadesh campaign. Things had not turned out well. Despite some narrow success on the battlefield itself, the larger strategic goal was a failure. The Kadeshians, those wretched, aggravating rebels, had thrown off Egyptian authority and kept it off. Now, the city remained a vassal of Hatti. The conflict would grind on. However, while Ramesses had lost a campaign, he intended to win the history. Shortly after his return, the king and his advisors began shaping their version of events. What followed was an elaborate artistic program, adorning temples with art and hieroglyphs proclaiming the king's victory. You can find these images and texts at the following sites: Abu Simbel, the Great Temple, in the main columned hall on the northern wall, to your right when you enter. Luxor Temple, on the two pylon towers that form the entrance of the monument. The Ramesseum, on the first pylons, to your left when you enter the site, and on the second pylon, which is just next to the fallen Colossus. At Abydos, on the outer walls of Ramesses' temple, specifically the northern wall on your right, and the western wall at the back of the monument. Finally, there were texts and scenes at Karnak, but these are mostly lost. Only a few edges survive, on the southern side of the temple, just outside the hypostyle hall. These are the surviving monuments. Presumably, Ramesses also commissioned art and inscriptions at other temples, like the sanctuary of Ptah in Men-Nefer, of Ra at Iunu, Heliopolis, and at the many temples of Ramesses. Sadly, those monuments are almost entirely gone, and if any pieces of Kadesh art survive, they remain undiscovered. Hopefully that will change in the future. Anyway, Ramesses' account comes in a few different flavors. Firstly, there is the art itself. Secondly, we have short hieroglyph captions that adorn the art, identifying sections and naming individual Hittites who supposedly fell in the battle. Thirdly, there is a short narrative, often called the bulletin, that presents a brief summary of the battle for easy consumption. Finally, there is the literary record, often known as the Kadesh Poem or the Poem of Pentawer. This is an elaborate text, about 300 lines long, presenting a dramatic account of the king's campaign and his personal exploits. This literary record, the poem, is the most significant of the texts. It appears on temple walls, mainly Karnak and Luxor, and in papyrus documents made by scribes copying it as an exercise. Today, the poem is the version you will most likely encounter in popular histories of Ramesses or the battle. I'm going to read the entire thing for you in just a moment. But first, I want to briefly set some context about how Ramesses tells this tale. Although we use them to reconstruct history, the Kadesh inscriptions are not themselves historical. They are not sober, dispassionate accounts of events. Instead, all of these works are pieces of literature and art, communicating a message. That message is simple. Victory. Victory by the king, with the aid of the gods, against all foreign lands. That is not even a between-the-lines reading. The Kadesh Poem, or literary record, actually opens with the phrase Chatia empa nechtu nesu biti, or the beginning of the victory of the king of southern and northern Egypt. Ramesses' names come after that, and then the narrative proper begins. But that phrase, beginning of the victory, tells us the tone and the genre of this inscription. The phrase itself is reasonably common in royal storytelling, especially when they are recounting a military adventure. Many pharaohs, not just Ramesses, will describe things as the beginning of the victory. Because fundamentally, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and art, especially that on the walls of temples, is meant to uphold a certain ideal. The ideal of the monarch as the protector, as the warrior, as the victorious king. This is so important to keep in mind. When it comes to Ramesses II and his account of Kadesh, we often look sideways at the king's personality. In the tale to come, you're going to hear passages that seem way overblown. The king goes forth, overthrows his enemy single-handedly, with no army or followers to aid him. Now, in physical, practical terms, we don't believe that. But it's important to remember that the poem is, first and foremost, a piece of literature. And while Ramesses' storytelling has plenty of unique flourishes, like the king's candidness about the mistakes leading up to the battle, the overall tone of the poem and the image of the king as the victorious warrior fighting single-handed, that is anything but unusual. You'll find this motif in Egyptian art and royal inscriptions going right back to the start of their history, whether it is the smiting scenes of Narmer, Khufu, Montuhotep II, or the narratives of Ahmose expelling the Hyksos, Thutmose subjugating Nubians and Syrians, Tutankhamun riding against foes and animals alike, or Ramesses' own father, Seti I, who adorned Karnak with images of himself riding alone against all foreign territories. Throughout their history, the Egyptian monarch appears as the lone warrior hero. The image is so common, such an important part of the visual identity of these kings, that it's kind of strange we look at Ramesses specifically and say, oh, that's a bit much. I'm not here to defend these monarchs, but it's important to keep this context in mind. Ramesses II seems bombastic and overblown, but really, he's no more so than any of his predecessors. If you're interested to learn more about these motifs and genres, you can find them in the works of Peter Brand, Colleen Manasseh, and Anthony Spellinger. I'll put some references in the episode description. For now, let us move on to the text itself. The literary record, or poem, can be found on temple walls at Karnak and Luxor Temple. It also survives on a papyrus, known as Papyrus Salier III, now in the British Museum. I used sections of the literary record throughout my Battle of Kadesh episode, but I didn't read the whole thing, and I also mixed in passages from the bulletin and the hieroglyph captions that accompany the art. So what you heard then was kind of an abridged version, combining all three sources. Now, I'd like to give you the full rendition of this dramatic tale, and I'd like to do it with music. I have a suspicion, though I can't prove it, that many of these royal inscriptions are meant to be read aloud, recited on important occasions like a festival or a celebration of the king's reign. In that circumstance, I imagine that there might be musicians accompanying the speakers in order to add flair and bombast to the telling. To bring that idea to life, I recorded the entire poem or literary record, and I sent a copy to two musicians whom I've worked with on the podcast before. The first was Jeffrey Goodman, who has made some wonderful albums evoking ancient Egypt and its stories. You've heard his music on the show before, usually in small snippets at the start or end of episodes. I reached out to Jeffrey to see what he came up with, and he produced a musical accompaniment to the tale as I read it. The full thing is quite long, about 20 minutes from start to finish. So if you want to take a quick break, this is a good place to pause. Otherwise, I'll see you in a moment. And now, please enjoy The Battle of Kadesh, as told by Ramesses II, read by Dominic Perry, with music by Jeffrey Goodman. Quote, the beginning of the victory of the king of southern and northern Egypt, Usur Ma'at Ra, Setep En Ra, the son of Ra, Ramesses, the beloved of Amun, given life forever. The victory that he won over the land of Hatti, over Nahrin, the land of Arzawa, Pidasa, the land of Dardania, the land of Massa, the land of Karkisha and Luka, of Karkemish, of Kedi, the land of Kadesh, the land of Ugarit, and Mushanet. His Majesty was a youthful lord, active without his equal. His arms were mighty, his heart was stout, his strength was like Montu in his hour. He was perfect of form like Atum, hailed when his beauty is seen. He was victorious over all lands, cunning when launching a fight. He was a strong wall around his soldiers, their shield on the day of battle. He was a bowman without equal, who prevails over vast numbers. Head on, he charges against a multitude, his heart trusting his strength. He was stout-hearted in the hour of combat, like the fire when it consumes. He was strong of heart, like a bull ready for battle, and he does not regard all of the lands combined against him. 1,000 men cannot withstand him. 100,000 fail at the sight of him. He is a lord of fear, great of fame, in the hearts of all lands. He is great of awe, rich in glory, just like Seth upon his mountain. He casts fear in the heart of the foreigners, like a wild lion in a valley of goats. He goes forth in valor and returns in triumph. He looks straight and is free of boasting. He is firm in conduct, good in planning, whose first response is always correct. He saves his troops on the day of battle, and he greatly assists his charioteers. He brings his followers home. He rescues his soldiers, with a heart that is like a mountain of copper. He is the king of southern and northern Egypt, Usur Ma'at Ra Setapen Ra, the son of Ra, Ramesses, beloved of Amun, given life forever like Ra. Now, His Majesty had made ready his infantry and his chariotry, and the Sherden warriors in His Majesty's captivity, whom he had brought back in the victories of his strong arm. They had been supplied with all their weapons, and battle orders had been given to them. His Majesty journeyed northward, his infantry and his chariotry with them, having made a good start with the march in year 5, the 2nd month of summer, day 9. His Majesty passed the fortress of Charu, being mighty like Montu in his going forth. All foreign lands trembled before him, their chiefs bringing their gifts, and all rebels came, bowed down through fear of His Majesty's might. His Majesty's army travelled on the narrow paths. His Majesty's army travelled on the foreign roads as if they were on the roads of Egypt. Now, when days had passed like this, His Majesty came to Ramesses Miamun, the town which is in the valley of the cedar trees, and His Majesty proceeded northward. And when His Majesty reached the hill country of Kadesh, His Majesty went ahead, like Montu, the lord of Waset. he crossed the ford of the Orontes River with the 1st Army Division, called Amun Gives Victory to Usur Ma'atra Setepenra, and His Majesty arrived at the town of Kadesh. Now, the vile foe from Hatti had come and brought together all the foreign lands as far as the end of the sea. The entire land of Hatti had come, and also that of Naharim, of Arzawa and Dardania, the land of Keshkesh, of Massa, of Pidasa and Irun, the land of Karkisha, Lukka, Kizuwadna, Karkemish, Ugarit, Kedi, and the entire land of Nuges, Mushannet, and Kadesh. The vile foe had not spared a country from being brought, of all those distant lands, and their chiefs were there with him, every one with his infantry and his chariotry, a great number without equal. The foe covered the mountains and valleys and were like locusts in their multitude. The enemy had left no silver in his land. He had stripped it of all its possessions, and he had given that to all the foreign countries in order to bring them with him to fight. Now, the vile foe of Hatti and the many foreign countries with him stood concealed and ready to the northeast of the town of Kadesh, while His Majesty was alone by himself with his attendants, the army of Amun marching behind him, the army of Para crossing the ford in the neighborhood south of the town of Shabutna, at a distance of 1 iter from where His Majesty was. The army of Ptah was to the south of the town of Ironama, and the army of Seth was still marching on the road. His Majesty had made a first battle force from the very best of his army, and it was on the shore of the land of Amor. Now, the vile chief of Hatti stood in the midst of the army that was with him, but he did not come out to fight for fear of His Majesty. Even though he had caused men and horses to come in very great numbers like the sand, they were 3 men to a chariot and equipped with all weapons of warfare, and they had been made to stand concealed behind the town of Kadesh. Then they came forth from the south side of Kadesh, and they attacked the division of Para in its middle, just as they were marching unaware and not prepared to fight. Then the infantry and chariotry of His Majesty weakened before the enemy, while His Majesty was stationed to the north of the town of Kadesh, over on the west bank of the Orontes. Messengers came to tell it to His Majesty, and His Majesty rose up like his father Montu. He seized his weapons of war. He took his coat of armor. He was like Baal in his moment. The great pair of horses that bore His Majesty's chariot were named Victory in Waset, and they came from the great stable of Usur Ma'atra Setepenra, the beloved of Amun. Then His Majesty drove at a gallop, and he charged the forces of the wretched enemy from Hatti. He was alone, by himself. No one else was with him. His Majesty looked about him, and he found 2,500 chariots surrounding him on his way out, all of the fast troops of the foe from Hatti, and the many countries that were with him: Arzawa, Massa, Pidasa, Keshkesh, Irun, Kizuwadna, Kaleb, Ugarit, Kadesh, and Luka. They were all 3 men to a chariot, acting together. No officer was with me, no charioteer, no soldier of the army, and no shield-bearer. My infantry, my chariotry, had yielded before the enemy. Not one of them stood firm to fight. And His Majesty called out, saying, "What is this, Father Amun? Is it right for a father to ignore his son? Are my deeds a matter for you to ignore? Do I not walk and stand at your word? I have not neglected any order that you gave. Too great is he, the great Lord of Egypt, to allow foreigners to step on his road. What are these Easterners to you, O Amun, these wretches who are ignorant of the God? Have I not made for you many great monuments? Have I not filled your temple with my plunder? Have I not built for you my temple of millions of years, and given you all of my wealth as its endowment? I have brought you all lands to supply your altars. I have sacrificed to you 10,000s of cattle, and all kinds of sweet-smelling herbs. I did not abstain from any good deed, so as not to perform it in your court. I built great pylon gateways for you, and I erected their flagstaffs myself. I brought you obelisks from Yebu. It was I who fetched their stones. I conveyed to you ships from the sea to haul the produce of all lands to you. Should it be said that the gain is small for any who entrusts himself to Amun's will? Do good for the one who counts on you, then one will serve you with a loving heart. I call to you, my father Amun. I am among a host of strangers. All countries are arranged against me. I am alone. There is no one with me. My numerous troops have deserted me, and not one of my charioteers looks for me. I keep on shouting for them, but none of them heeds my call. But I know Amun helps me more than 1,000,000 troops, more than 100,000 charioteers, more than 10,000 brothers and sons who are united as one heart. The labors of many people are nothing. Amun is more helpful than they. I came here by the command of your mouth. O Amun, I have not transgressed your command. Now, although I prayed in a distant land, my voice resounded in the southern Iyunu, that is, Karnak. I found Amun came when I called to him. He gave me his hand, and I rejoiced. Amun called from behind, as if he was standing next to me. He said, "Forward, I am with you. I, your father, my hand is with you. I prevail over 100,000 men. I am the Lord of victory, the lover of bravery." I found my heart stout. My breast was in joy. Everything that I did succeeded. I was like Montu. I shot on my right. I grasped with my left. I was before them like Seth in his moment. I found the mass of the chariots, in whose midst I was, scattering before my horses. Not one of them found his hand to fight. Their hearts failed in their bodies through fear of me. Their arms slackened. They could not shoot. They had no heart to grasp their spears. I made them plunge into the water as crocodiles plunge. They fell on their faces, one on the other, and I slaughtered among them at my will. Not one looked behind him, not one turned around. Any who fell down did not rise. And the wretched chief of Hatti stood among his troops and chariots, watching his majesty, Ramesses, fight all alone, without his soldiers and charioteers, and he stood turning, shrinking and afraid. Then the wretched foe of Hatti caused many more chiefs to come forth, each of them with his chariotry and equipped with their weapons of warfare. The chief of Arzawa and of Massa, the chief of Irun and of Luka, the chief of Dardania, the chief of Karkemish, the chief of Karkisha, of Caleb, and the brothers of him and of Hatti all together. Their total of 1,000 chariots came straight into the fire. I, Ramesses, charged towards them, being like Montu. In a moment I gave them a taste of my hand. I slaughtered among them. They were slain on the spot. One called out to the other, saying, "This is not a man that is among us. It is Seth, the great of strength. It is Baal here in person. These doings are not the deeds of a man. They are the deeds of one who is unique, who fights 100,000 enemies without any soldiers or chariots. Quickly, flee before him. Seek life and breath and air. For he who attempts to get close to this one, his hands grow limp. One cannot hold either bow or spear when one sees the pharaoh come racing along." My majesty, Ramesses, hunted them like a griffin. I slaughtered amongst them unceasingly. I raised my voice to shout to my army, saying, "Steady! Steady your hearts, my soldiers! Behold, I am victorious, me alone. For Amun is my helper, and his hand is with me. How faint are your hearts, charioteers! No one among you is worthy of trust. Is there none among you whom I helped in my land? Did I not rise as lord when you were lowly? And I made you into chiefs by my will every day. I have placed a son in his father's position. I have banished all falsehood from the land. I released your servants to you. I gave you the things that were taken from you. Whoever made a petition of me, I said to him, I will do it. No lord has done for his soldiers what my majesty did for your sakes. I let you dwell in your villages without doing the service of a soldier. So with my chariotry also, I released them to their towns, saying, I shall find them just as today, in the hour of joining battle. But look, You have all been cowards. Not one among you stood fast to lend me a hand while I fought. As the Ka spirit of my father Amun endures, I wish I were back in Egypt, like my fathers, who did not see Syrians and who did not fight them in foreign lands. Not one among you has come so that he might speak of his service in Egypt. What a good deed done to him who raised monuments in Waset, the city of Amun. This crime of my soldiers and charioteers, that is too great to tell. Now when my shield-bearer, Menena, saw that a large number of chariots had surrounded me, he too became weak and faint-hearted, with great fear invading his body. Menena said to his majesty, to me, "My good lord, strong ruler, great savior of Egypt in a time of war, we stand alone in the midst of battle, abandoned by your soldiers and chariotry. Why do you stand to protect them? Let us get clear, save ourselves, Usamatra Setepenra." His Majesty, me, replied to the shield-bearer, saying, "Stand firm, steady your heart, shield-bearer. I will charge the enemy, just as a falcon dives. I will slaughter, butcher, and fling them to the ground. Why do you fear these weaklings, whose multitudes I disregard?" Then His Majesty, me, rushed forward at a gallop. For 6 times he charged them. I, Ramesses, was after them like Baal in his moment of power, and I slew them without ceasing. Now, when my soldiers and chariotry saw that I was like Montu, the strong-armed, and that my father Amun was with me, making the foreign lands into wheat before me, they, the soldiers, started coming one by one to enter the camp at the time of night. They counted all the foreign lands against whom I had charged, lying fallen in their own blood. All the good warriors of Hatti, the sons and brothers of their chiefs, for I had wrecked the plain of Kadesh. It could not be trodden upon because of their mass. Thereupon my soldiers came to praise me. Their faces were bright at the sight of my deeds. My charioteers likewise exalted my name, saying, "Hail, O good warrior, firm of heart! You have saved your soldiers and your chariotry. You are the son of Amun, who acts with his 2 arms. You have felled Hatti by your valiant strength. You are the perfect warrior, there is none like you. A king who battles for his army on the battle day. You are great-hearted, first in the ranks. You do not heed all of the lands combined against you. You are greatly victorious before your army, before the whole land. It is no boast. O protector of Egypt, defeater of foreign lands, you have broken the back of Hatti forever." Then His Majesty, Ramesses, said to his infantry, his captains, and his chariotry, "What about you, my captains, soldiers, my charioteers, who shirked the fight? Does a man not act to be praised in his own town when he returns as a brave one before his lord? A name made good through combat is truly good. A man is forever respected for his bravery. Have I not done good to any of you, that you should leave me alone in the midst of battle? You are lucky to be alive at all, you who took the air while I was alone. Did you not know it in your hearts that I am your rampart made of iron? What will men say when they hear of this, that you left me alone without a comrade, that no chief, charioteer, or soldier came to lend me a hand while I was fighting? I crushed 1,000,000 countries by myself with my 2 great horses named Victory in Waset and Moot is Content. It was they whom I found supporting me when I was alone fighting many lands. They shall henceforth be fed in my presence whenever I reside in my palace. It was these horses whom I found in the midst of battle, and my shield-bearer, the charioteer Menena, and my household butlers who were at my side. They were my witnesses in combat. Behold, I found them." My Majesty paused in valor and in victory, having felled hundreds of thousands by my strong arm. At dawn, I marshaled the ranks for battle. I was ready to fight, like an eager bull. I arose against the enemy in the likeness of Montu. I was equipped with my weapons of victory. I charged their ranks, fighting just as a falcon dives. The serpent upon my brow felled many foes and cast her fiery breath in the faces of my enemies. I was like Ra when he rises at dawn. My sun rays, they burned the bodies of the rebels. And the enemy called out to one another, saying, "Beware, take care, don't approach him. It is Sekhmet the Great who is with him. She is with him upon his horses. Her hand is with him. Anyone who goes to approach him, the breath of fire will come to burn his body." So the enemy stood at a distance and touched the ground with their hands before me. My majesty overpowered them. I slew them without sparing one. They sprawled before my horses and lay slaughtered in mounds in their blood. Then the vile chief of Hatti wrote and worshipped my name like that of Ra. He said to the king, "You are Seth, you are Baal here in person. The dread of you is a fire in the land of Hatti." The chief of Hatti sent his envoy with a letter in his hand addressed to the great name of my majesty, greeting the majesty of the palace, which is called Ra-Horakti, the strong bull beloved of Ma'at, the sovereign who protects his army, who is mighty on account of his strong arm, the rampart of his soldiers on the day of battle, the king of southern and northern Egypt, Usur Ma'at Ra, the son of Ra, the lion lord of strength, Ramesses, beloved of Amun, given life forever. The chief of Hatti wrote the following message. "Your servant speaks, to let it be known that you are the son of Ra, who came from his body. He has given you all of the land together. As for the land of Egypt and the land of Hatti, they are your servants beneath your 2 feet. Pa-Ra, your august father, has given them to you. Do not overwhelm us. Behold, your might is great, your strength is heavy upon the lands of Hatti. Is it good that you slay your servants, with your face savage towards them and without pity? Behold, you spent yesterday killing 100,000, and today you came back and left no heirs. Be not hard in your dealings, victorious king. Peace is better than fighting. Please give us breath." Then my majesty relented in life and dominion, being like Montu at his moment when his attack is done. My majesty ordered brought to me all of the leaders of my infantry and my chariotry, all of my officers assembled together, to let them hear the matter about which the enemy had written. My majesty let them hear the words of the vile chief of Hatti, and they said to my majesty with one voice, "Truly excellent is peace, O sovereign, our lord. There is no blame in peace when you make it. Who could resist you on the day of your wrath?" My majesty commanded to listen to his words, and I, Ramesses, moved southward in peace. His majesty returned in peace to Egypt, with his infantry and his chariotry. All life, stability, and dominion was with them, and the gods and goddesses were protecting his body. He had crushed all lands through fear of him. The strength of his majesty had protected his army, and all foreign lands gave praise to his beautiful face. He arrived in peace in Egypt, in the city of Ramesses, beloved of Amun, great of victories. He was resting in his palace of life and dominion, like Ra in his horizon. The gods of this land, Egypt, praised him and said, "Welcome, our beloved son, King Usur-Ma'at Ra Setepen-Ra, the son of Ra, Ramesses, the beloved of Amun, who is given life." The gods gave Ramesses millions of said festivals, forever on the throne of Ra, with all lowlands and all highlands lying prostrate under his feet forever and all time. The end. The History of Egypt podcast is supported by you, the listeners. In particular, I would like to thank my subscribers on patreon.com, who give most generously every month and help me to pay for rent, food, research, writing, and to support musicians like Jeffrey in order to make these compositions. Thank you everyone who supports the show. I'd like to give an extra shout out to the priests, my top tier backers. These fine folks are far too generous with their money, and I am in their debt. Extra special thanks to Linda, Nadine, Daniel, Terry, Ashley, Eric, James B., Veronica, Mycost, TJ, Yola, Jean, Andy and Chelsea, Karen, Si Yen, Erin, Erjan, Kate, Dan, Carlos, James M., Chris, Suyon, and Setnacht. Folks, thank you kindly for your most generous support. May you enjoy a victory that begins and never ends, and may the great gods spur you on to ever greater achievements. To everyone listening, thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you soon.